biggest station in the world, playing all of today's hits. You're listening to Instinct Radio.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Marquita Blades Show, candid conversations that create change. I am Dr. Blades, and I want to thank you for joining me. I'm joined today by two outstanding educators, Dr. Gretchen Jones Torbert and Dr. Erica Donerlson. And our topic today is what about the gifted? I wanted to have this conversation because as a consultant, whenever I'm out presenting, and after my presentations, I am approached by other educators who are looking for consultants, they always want to know, what do you have for struggling students? What do you have for struggling writers, struggling readers, students who have difficulties with math? They are never asking me what I have for advanced learners. And so it prompted me to ask, what about the gifted? Are we giving our gifted students the attention that they deserve? Before we jump into the topic, I'll have each one of my panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their backgrounds. And we'll start with you, Dr. Erica.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Erica Donerlson, and I am an educator with the Atlanta Public School System, and I've been teaching for 23 years. Ooh. 10 years with first grade, 2 years with fourth grade, and 11 years in gifted education. Yes, and still going strong.
Well, I'm Dr. Gretchen Jones. This is my 16th year in education. I started off as a math specialist, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and ESOL students as well. And I was an academic data coach in DeKalb County for 3 years, and now I'm working with gifted 5th graders.
Wow, you are both very accomplished. Thank you for taking the time out to join me today. I know you have tons of things that you could be doing, so I'm so happy that you chose to spend this afternoon with me having this very important conversation. What about the gifted? We have had a lot of activity on Facebook for the pre-show, so I want to thank all of my followers who have been setting up this conversation for today. The first question comes from my sweet, sweet Uncle Omar. He wanted to know, what makes a student gifted? How are they given that title? So either one of you can share that insight for him so that he can understand the background and what it means to be gifted.
Well, my personal definition for the number of years that I've been in education, my personal definition of gifted is the child who has a high level of curiosity. Okay. A child that wants to make a connection to things that they are exposed to, and a child who just wants to know and understand how things are connected and why. Mm-hmm. So if I had to sum it up, I would sum it up by saying a gifted child is one who has a high level of curiosity, loves to make connections, has a strong passion for something that is of interest to him or her, and just wants to understand how things connect and how they come into being.
Okay, and so Dr. Gretchen, how does the school determine if a student is gifted?
Well, the process with this schooling is through a process of testing. Mm-hmm. Either the parent can identify that they want their child to be tested, or either the teacher or either the gifted coordinator will identify that they want the child to go through a series of testing, looking at their creativity, their math, as well as their ELA assessments. And to add on to what you were saying, I also believe that the critical thinking part is very, very critical in that. Help for a gifted child to be able to really be able to analyze information, to decipher between the data, the information that they're receiving, and be able to research-base that information to critically think, to formulate an answer to those questions that are given to them. So being able to have those critical thinking skills.
Okay, I know when I was teaching, when I first started, my aim was to teach gifted students. Okay. And the reason was because I figured if they're gifted, it'll make my job easier. So I think a common misconception is that it's easy to teach the gifted learner. Please share your thoughts on that.
I give that feedback all the time that your profession is easy. But in my particular years of background of working with gifted students, I find that it has been more challenging because I have to keep them challenged. I have to keep that innate motivation driven for them, that they can see an end result, that I don't lose them along the way. Because most of the time, some of them in some capacity believe they already know the answer, or they've already figured it out, or they don't have to do the work. So then that, on the flip side of that is just keeping that motivation there for them to continuously work on something, to continuously try to research something, or to find an answer to something.
And believe it or not, out of the 12 years where I was in the general ed classroom setting, I think I work harder now with the gifted students and just creating that curriculum that will allow them to think outside the box and go beyond what the standards are for that particular grade level. I find myself working extremely hard to make sure that I'm motivating them as the instructor, but also allowing them to use their own critical thinking so that they can move beyond what they already know in search of something new. So no, it's not easy. It's not easy. No.
It comes. I can see it comes with its own set of challenges, just as working with any other student. Now, when it comes to resources, do you feel there's a difference between what is offered to the gifted population as opposed to the general population, and then in comparison to the special education population?
Good question.
Well, what I found myself doing is creating resources.
Okay.
And particularly creating different curriculums to help piggyback on what is given to them, because I'm able to front load a lot of the information that we're required to teach. I'm creating different resources, different information pieces to help them to continue to drive on what they want to learn, because in my arena working with gifted, I may have a student that may be strong in math, a student that's strong in ELA, a student that's stronger that may be strong in reading, or may really enjoy science. And then again, I may just have a student that's very creative, but they were able to test into gifted at a very early age because they had excellent reading skills. So now I'm really kind of seeing along the line, now that we've gotten past the first and second grade years of testing into being a gifted program, what their strengths are. And so I'm having to tap into that, utilize whatever pacing guide that is given to me based upon a particular curriculum that we're set to teach, and then trying to add on to that to develop resources to really build upon their learning, and then also teach them to go forward. So that classroom for me is like a hodgepodge. We may have some students working on 8th, 9th grade math skills, and then I'm having another students being very creatively driven in a project, developing it to something that he or she may like. So I'm adding on to the resources that are there. And since I couldn't find a lot of resources that were available, I found myself making some myself.
Has that been your experience as well?
It's a little different, and I think the fact that you're with a 5th grade condensed classroom setting within, and I have a variety of kids from grades 1st through 5. So for me with Atlanta Public Schools, it's not acceleration, is exploratory. So with us, we have units that we'll use to introduce students to things that they may not be introduced to within their grade levels, and we will add on extension activities for that. Now, there is a small part of the standards so that the information that we're presenting to the kids are not just random things. There's supposed to be a standard that connects to the units, and at the same time gives them an opportunity to move beyond what the required standards are asking them to know. So as far as resources, a lot of the things that I introduce to the kids are things that I come up with myself, or things that I, like you said, in the forefront, try to look at some aspects of what it is that I think I would like for the kids to know. What is it that they already know? And then my part becomes what else can I extend to them so that it becomes more of a learning experience for them outside of what they already know. So resources are not as freely given to me as it is for the grade levels. And because of that, I do find myself being very creative. And what I do find myself doing a lot of times, even though I may have an agenda for what we're going to be working on, because the units are set up where there are 10-week units. So every week there is a subtopic that goes along with the full unit. So a lot of times whenever we're working on a subtopic, if there is a level of curiosity that the students are interested in, as we're going through the subtopic, then there's a moment where I may need to stop, because at that point they're asking questions. So I want the kids to understand that when you come to a part of, even though there are some guidelines as to what we're going to be doing today, if there's a moment where we need to stop, We need to figure out the questions, the answers to your questions. That's how I try to introduce them in researching and finding out answers to things that we don't know. So the good thing about what I do is the exploratory program allows me to be a little bit more open, whereas within a grade level, there are certain standards that you have to introduce, and if they know it, that's great, you can move beyond that point, but I'm not tied into a set timeline of when these things have to be introduced, and can I veer off from what my lesson plans tell me that I can do, because as long as the kids are excited about what they're doing and it's an extension to what we're doing, then we're on the right path.
Now, what about accountability with gifted? I know that with special ed, the accountability is very high. There's so much paperwork. And even it's becoming that way in general education as well. You have to document. Do you have those same pressures with gifted learners in terms of accountability and documentation?
Oh, I have to answer this one. Ooh, if I could just take the moment to answer this one. I'm at a school within Atlanta Public Schools where there's a careful eye watching our progress in terms of testing. So the mindset of most people is that if they're gifted, then their test score should indicate a level 3, a level 4.
Okay, yes.
And sometimes it's not always that simple to just assume that if you have so many gifted students, these kids are automatically going to score high on the Georgia milestones. And I think you mentioned before, a lot of the kids that I have now, especially in grades 3, 4, and 5, they were able to meet the criteria for gifted early on, kindergarten, first grade. And of course, coming from a great background of parents support, teachers support, our kids are coming in a little bit ready for school than what may have been present before. So accountability is, you have gifted students, so those students should master the standards and the skills on the Georgia milestones. So when it comes to points, because now it's based off of points for CCRP. Yes. We're looking at how many points can we gain from students who have already been qualified as gifted. But like you mentioned before, gifted does not necessarily mean that you're well-roundedly gifted in all areas. So you could have a strong sense of math, science, social studies, just the arts. So it doesn't necessarily mean academically you're strong in all areas. It's just that you have the ability to do better things at a better rate than kids at your particular grade level. So accountability does kind of fall in my lap in terms of what can you do to make sure that they meet those criteria.
And it sounds like there's a little bit less wiggle room to get there.
It is, because for those kids that do well, if you score 3, the idea is that you move them. There has to be a sense of growth with the kids. They can do well, but if they stay at a 3, then there's some sign of concern that we may have about, well, why aren't they growing? And to me, the growth comes from allowing us to use our level of creativity with the kids and critical thinking so that they can think beyond what those questions are that are addressed on the Georgia milestones. So to me, sometimes we stifle the creativity and the critical thinking parts of our kids, which could be the difference between their growth from a level 3 to a level 4. So
I totally agree. For me, especially since I have to make sure I teach that content base, I feel like the pressure is there to also see that performance at level 3 and level 4. And I could have a student, of course, considered gifted, loves the arts, loves to be creative, love to draw, love to critically think, loves to perform, but they're not strong in that math content area. And so the pressure becomes, well, Dr. Torbert, we want them to score a 3 and a 4. So the pressure for me becomes making sure I teach that content, that they have a good understanding of that content, and then also, because I got to keep that innate motivation tap into that to make sure it's still fun, exciting for the child, so I can push them.
That's it.
And so the expectation is, we know Dr. Torbert's scores are going to be good. So that is pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
I have that content that is taught, and I'm trying to front load it, so I can still go back and still tap into that innate motivation for them to keep them strong in the class setting.
Oh yes.
That is really interesting, and I keep hearing the word motivation and innate motivation.
That's it.
And we do know that gifted students come in with a certain amount of intrinsic motivation of wanting to do well, but how do you handle these type of students when they don't live up to their own expectations and they think that they're supposed to know it or get it right away. How do you help them to understand that while they are classified as gifted, they should not expect to be perfect?
Exactly.
Well, this is where I had to develop some resources. I developed a book called Bring Expulsions to give them opportunities to break away from the educational setting, whether that's going outside, taking a moment to just have a little snack and chat. Maybe it's time to just talk with me. We'll talk about the weekends. Just kind of break away from the setting. To me, that drives them in so we can have that relationship. For me, every year is about relationship building, to build that innate motivation, to let them know that I do care. And then to also share with them my experiences of growing up being gifted and not being labeled till later on, and realizing that there was something different, but the resources were not available then to assist me. I just knew that I had that particular something that was different. But still being in that regular setting, but wanting more. So I tell them all the time, I say, you have to live up to your own personal expectations. You have to want to exceed and excel. And I think sometimes I maybe not in a good sense, I may apply too much pressure, because now I want them to exceed in the content, but I also don't want to lose them along the way and say, we're going to still have time to tap into what you enjoy. And so my students are able to attend a program called Program Challenge on Thursdays, where they actually see someone that can really tap into those other areas stronger for a whole day's time. Then they come back to me to more or less get the content. But in 4 days, I still need to be able to really tap into those areas that they enjoy doing, whether it's developing a YouTube video or developing their own website. So I'm trying to merge that information, the content information, along with something that they really enjoy.
That's good. And at the beginning of the year, we introduced a growth mindset. Was introduced, and my takeaway from that is basically the motivation for yourself in knowing you're not perfect, but if you tell yourself that I'm doing the best I can, and that my ceiling does not come with a cover, and I can move beyond my expectations, but I have to believe in myself that I can actually do it. Some things I'm not going to be perfect in, but if I know what my strengths are, then I can tap into my strengths. So what we do at the beginning of the year is more of a survey. So the kids get a chance to answer questions, and from those questions, we can pretty much tell if technology is of interest to you, if science. I have kids who love to read. They will take their recess time and just read. So with that reading and that technology and the science and the arts, it's up to me when we're creating those units and lessons to sort of make sure that I tap into those individual things that kids like, so that they can see a sense of success in the things that we're doing. But I think you mentioned it once before. If you're pleased with who you are, and you have a family surrounding, just like the saying goes, it takes a village. If you have enough people in your village to support what your passion is, then to me that gives you a chance to feel good about yourself and know that as I continue to grow and listen and mature in my academic, the sky is the limit. So growth mindset, growth mindset. And believe it or not, and it's so passionate for me, but believe it or not, a lot of our gifted students will find themselves in not a depression state of mind, but more of, I can't do it. Everyone is expecting so much of me. And when I can't reach what their expectations are, I feel like I'm letting them down. So to kind of help the kids, because most times you'll think, oh, they'll get over it or they will be okay. But believe it or not, some of our gifted kids are not strong enough mentally to understand that. You know, as you get older, of course, those things will come with experience. But for a younger child, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we have to motivate them to first believe in yourself, and then help them to have a surrounding of a village that supports what their interest is, and just keep them motivated.
And that's the same thing we have to do for any student. But I think people don't think it's necessary for gifted learners. And some of the pre-show conversation that happened online, someone made the comment, speaking to the point that you just made, that pretty much your gifted students are still at risk.
They
in
are.
a sense.
They are. Yes.
For the same reasons that you just stated, because of that pressure, and they can feel like I'm not living up, and so it leads to depression and all these other emotions.
So
I know
true.
she mentioned something that was really key about the growth mindset. So just recently I told all my students, we're not even going to worry about grades. because I know that pressure is there, and it's pressure for me as well. But,
Exactly.
You expect them all to get these honors. The parents are expecting it. The administration is expecting it. I said, no, we're not going to worry about grades.
Right.
So then I'm returning assignments. There's still not a grade on here, Dr. Torbert. I want to see your process of thinking. I want to see your understanding. I'm not worried about grades. I said, you guys are going to excel regardless. I know you are. And to me, I saw a change in the classroom because they're so concerned with what is my grade. So I like that adoption of the growth mindset as well.
Makes a big difference.
A concerned parent from Facebook, she was a gifted learner as a student, and she raised a son who was also a gifted learner. And her main issue was saying that the gifted program never really challenged her son in the way that she knew that it needed to and that it could. And so she found herself often supplementing and having to give him extra assignments and enrichment activities to do. Do you find that you have parents coming to you also asking for additional assignments and enrichment activities as well?
Well, I haven't had that in a while. When I first started teaching gifted, I did. And I think it was a learning curve for myself. But as of lately, I hear parents say, you give them a lot of work.
It's just the opposite.
And so what I try to do is balance it. I'm not a big proponent of homework.
Okay.
And so if they are expressing a concern, the concern is more or less through the class day work. And I try to let them know that, I'm still pushing the content that's required, but I'm also tapping into those other additional skills. But I do believe that it needs to be a balanced setting once they go home.
Okay.
So when they go home, I want them to encourage them to do exploratory activities, extracurricular activities, spend some family time, let's have some conversation, so they can still move past. It's more than just about this grade. I'm not being defined by my grade or how I'm doing. So early on in my career, I did hear a lot of that, but lately it's just more or less been about, is it too much, or your requirements? Because, I have just high expectations of them, of how I want them to think and process information, even how they behave.
I took a PD a while ago on rigor.
Okay.
And the presenter, I wish I remembered her name, but the presenter made a point for all of us to recognize the difference between rigorous and hard. Is the lesson rigorous, or is it difficult?
Right.
I think that another misconceptions around gifted is that the work is supposed to be hard. So can you guys share a little bit with the audience so that they can understand the difference between providing rigor for a student and then making it difficult for a student?
It's funny that you said that. With gifted, all of the gifted teachers in elementary, middle, and high, we meet every quarter. So our meeting was just this past Wednesday, and the presenter that was there from the State Department, his topic was rigor. So it's funny that it's a coincidence that it's all coming back together here. But some of the misconceptions that were listed on his PowerPoint was rigor is more work. Rigor is giving the child the opportunity to be the teacher. Rigor is, basically giving them work beyond their grade level expectations. But something that he mentioned in his presentation that sort of struck me as an aha moment was rigor is not any of those things. Because for me to give you an additional 20 problems is not rigor. Rigor is having the example of how to move beyond what you already know. So opening up your mind and your thoughts to what it is that you're working on and moving beyond that. And the example that he gave, it was very interesting. So let's just say the kids are talking about the different types of wars. And we know that those are being introduced 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Of course, the standards for what the students are expected to know, that's there. But what happens when we take a child where the information is not laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have them to do things, such as go and interview, someone who had some type of connection to the wars. So now you're getting a firsthand account versus what the book talked about. Or maybe if you don't have that person, maybe we can find a literature piece that's suitable for kids, and now we can create the reading where we're all reading together and we're talking about the book and we're putting experiences from what's happening now to what happened then to just kind of show how history repeats itself. So given those examples that the presenter shared with me, to me, because he made me a believer at that point, was that rigor is moving beyond what the expectations are and allowing the kids to have choice. So the choice could be, instead of me doing the same thing and all 18 or 19 of us are doing it, here is a choice board of ways in which we can tap into that topic of choice. And at the same time, we have our own spin on how we want to introduce and present that information. He also mentioned communication was a very great aspect of rigor, because as long as you can communicate, then that shows your level of understanding.
Right.
So, rigor to me, it takes a personal point of view with kids, but it allows them to have choice and to make decisions based on what's best for them.
Not 100 math problems.
Not 100 math problems. Not, I'm going to teach these kids and you go over here and work with them, because and believe it or not, some kids do learn better from others, from their peers, because the way in which they present the information could have been the same thing we said, but it's the way the kids presented it. But at the same time, are we serving the kids that are gifted in that way, or are we just kind of letting them be mediocre because we're not extending their learning, we're just allowing them to teach someone who hadn't quite gotten it.
We have a question from a viewer, Felicia Thomas. Thank you for tuning in, Flea. What do you think about the Move On When Ready program?
Wow. For me, I think that's very powerful.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gretchen.
No,
Can you tell them what it is
Sure.
for the people that are listening that are not familiar? Let them know what it is, and then share your thoughts on Move On When Ready.
What I found is interesting about that, students, we cluster students together into a program, and we expect them to all reach the same amount of information at the same time that is given to them. And sometimes students are just not ready for that. Sometimes students need additional time, additional support before they're able to move on. What I like about Henry County in particular is a one-to-one counting, but also the students are getting personalized education where it's fit personal for them. In conjunction with that, we have the family education progress as well, where students are clustered together with peers that may not be their age range, but they on their same level. To have students to be able to move on when they're ready, when they have developed the concept, when they understand the concept, to me breaks a lot of norms that we're currently embracing now. And one of those is testing. We're going to have to move away from the testing, move away from the textbooks, move away from just the basic basal knowledge that we receive, and be able to tap in using the inventory that you mentioned, tap into what the skills are of that student earlier on, and fit the curriculum. The curriculum basically just fit around that particular student in isolation. And that goes against a lot of our traditional teaching, because now I have to entertain in a level of differentiation that meets the needs of each individual child where they are, and allow them to grow where they are when they are ready to move on.
And a personal note to that, I have a senior. She's on her way out into the world and making a spot for herself here in the world. But she's a senior, but she takes courses at Georgia State. So that Move On When Ready system in terms of what she's doing is great, because she's finished the majority of her courses for high school. But now she can move on to courses that are being offered on the college level, and she's able to kind of pick and choose courses that she's interested in. So one of the courses that she's interested in is, and that she's taking currently, is African American Studies. So she has come back with so much information that she didn't previously know before. And that's only because she was able to move on into a program and a curriculum that was of interest to her. So now her level of understanding is different, and the fact that she's just a senior, but she's taking college courses, it gives them that edge as well. So that's another form of rigor at the same time. And then she has a really good friend who is a senior, but he's taken the majority of his classes at another college institution, because at the same time we're looking at professors. Sometimes professors on a college level present the information a little differently, from a high school teacher, and so he's loving it. The challenge is there, but that's what motivates him to want to do well. So I love the idea of the program, and I think it's very beneficial for our students who are ready.
I think also for students who are not 100% sure about what type of college they want to go to, or even if they want to go at all, it will give them a great preview to
That's
say,
it.
you know what, I don't even think I'm ready for this yet. Or they can say, the one that I chose to take these classes is not really where I want to be. Maybe I want to
Right.
step it up a notch.
Right.
And another benefit to move on when ready is I remember being in high school and we had early release. So you could,
Yes.
you didn't need the classes, you could get out early and go to work or whatever. And some schools have that, some schools don't. But I know when I was teaching, I had a lot of students who had to take something all day. So they wound up going to the classes they needed and then skipping the ones they didn't need, or sitting in someone else's classroom and causing a disruption. And so if a student can just move on when they're ready,
That's right.
you can take them out of these situations where they're not being productive.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you for that question, Felicia. We have some other comments as well. Oh, we have a whole lot of comments. I really appreciate the participation, y'all. Thank you. Almondo Smith, my favorite play cousin. Y'all see I can't keep it professional. Do you all think that parents can put too much pressure on their child because they are in a gifted class? And do they put pressure on you as the teacher? So y'all kind of spoke to that a little bit earlier.
I think growing up gifted, I think I do apply a lot of pressure on my personal students as well as the students that I work with as well. But I try to balance the pressure that is being applied by, like I said, I'm not a fan of homework. I'm, pretty much a project-based learner. So I enjoy projects. I enjoy opportunities for students to reflect and think with their families and to explore. But I think growing up has allowed me to be, I guess, the way I am in the classroom setting with the students that I work with, because my expectations are high. So.
I have a confession.
Okay.
I have a confession. I have two kids. I have a 12th grader and a 9th grader. The 12th grader did get into the gifted program. My 9th grader has been tested several times but can't seem to make the scores to qualify for gifted. But it's very evident within the grade levels that he goes into, matriculates into, that there's something there. But maybe it could just be a test taker's anxiety that he can't pass the test. But even as a gifted educator, I don't, you gotta pass it because I'm a gifted teacher, so you got to. But what I find myself doing sometimes, and I have to sit back, because I am working with gifted students and I work with them all day, every day, my expectations for him are a little bit more than what I probably would need to push on him. And that's because I'm looking at other kids and I'm looking at how they are and how they're performing, and I'm looking at him like, why aren't you reading the big journals and the novels, and why is your book only so many pages? And that's because I'm taking what I see in others and I'm trying to apply it to him. But the lesson that I take away from that is let kids be. So what I've done now, and I've kind of stepped back just a little bit, my exposure for him is a little different. And the hope is that as I'm exposing him to different things, as he's seeing the different things, he will pick up on something that is of interest to him and carry that along. Instead of me saying, I went to Barnes and Nobles and here are the 5 books I want you to read. Maybe if I start him off with a book of interest for him, then that may trigger, just the love for wanting to do it on his own. Now, of course, as a teacher, I'm not going to just say, all right, just do what you do. Life will be okay. But I do want to encourage him. But I think the encouragement comes, and this is for all parents, and this is just my personal advice, is allow them to be. Expose them to as many things as you can. Of course, with the children, you want to put them in art and music and robotics, and you want to do all these different things. And that's fine earlier on, because then it gives you a chance to see what it is they really like. We did piano lessons, organ lessons, because I want to know if anything that we touch on as you're growing up, if it's of interest to you, then maybe we can pursue it even more. But the step back part and just kind of let it naturally happen, I think that will be my advice for parents.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, if you don't mind, because with my son, he's being tested currently. And I think initially early on in the years, because I knew they would get tested on, in the earlier part of education, I did apply so much pressure. But now I realize he's strong in math and strong in science, but I kept pushing at reading and pushing at reading. He was initially tested. He didn't get in, and so he's being tested again currently. Right. But that pressure was there. Okay, I want you reading these books. Read like Mommy read. We're going to read in the afternoon, read on the weekend.
Right, find yourself doing
Yes, but he wanted to go creative. He wanted to go build. He'll take something apart, want to put it back together again, and he loved science. And I was like, no, I want you reading this book. So yeah, it's just I guess from what you said, just allowing him to just take on what he really enjoys. So when the gifted teacher, because she's going through the process of testing him, she said, oh, he just scored very well in math. And so I was up there like, yes. And I said, what about the verbal part? She said, oh, we'll talk about it. So I was like, okay. But I know it's different components, so I'm still trying to just allow him to be,
That's it. I have a saying, Dr. Blaze, and the saying is, everyone is gifted. We just open up our package at different times.
Oh, I love it.
I wasn't the gifted child. I went through the testing process, and I'm coming from a family of educators, but I didn't quite make it. But as I matriculated through elementary and high school, things started to click. And even as I went into the college setting, it became just that need to just want to know more. And even going into getting my master's, doing the specialist program, doing the doctorate, it finally clicked. But that was later on. But that too taught me to sit back and all that you have poured into your child, into your students, then of course let it be. And I have to say this. Every year I test several kids from grades kindergarten through 5th grade. And out of the number of students that I test, quite a few of them don't make it. So when the scores come back and we are sitting at the table, it's me and the parents, and they're trying to figure out why. The teacher said he was very smart. I don't understand why he didn't do well on his test. I tell them, take your scores. Look at the areas that were strengths, look at the areas that were weaknesses, and build upon that. Gifted classroom setting is a four-wall room setting. But what we do for gifted students can be done not just by me, because I'm certified, but it can also be done by a parent, another teacher, the art teacher. So gifted is something that is a label, but what a gifted students have can move beyond what the test scores say. So don't be discouraged. Don't feel as if your child has failed you. And even when we're testing, I don't use the word testing for my kindergartners and 1st graders. I tell them we're getting ready to have some fun. We're getting ready to look at some different things, some different puzzles, and we're going to work our brain TV and making sure we understand how to put those puzzle pieces together so that it completes a picture. So I don't want them to have the anxiety of test, because a lot of times as parents, we'll tell them, oh, you got to go to bed at 4 o'clock because you know you have to take that test tomorrow morning. I want you to do well. And then when the results come back, if it's not what the parents were hoping for, it becomes a discouragement. And believe it or not, kids see that. And if they believe that you're happy, you are your happiest when they have pleased you, then that growth mindset part again, then they become that thought of, did I fail you because I didn't make the score? Did I not give you all that I was supposed to give you? So I say to parents again, from a personal point of view, just let it naturally happen. So a lot of it too has to do with maturity with kids, especially our kindergartners and 1st graders. Sometimes we're not quite ready to sit for a standardized test. So it's not that they may not have it. We just open up our packages at different times.
I love that. I love that. Oh my. Okay. So, Dr. Elliott Heflin, hey, is there gifted programs for students beyond K through 12? So I know that some colleges have honors programs, and I guess that would be, as far as I know, I don't have any other knowledge on that.
No, the titles change. To me, when you get into, for us, for Atlanta Public Schools, it's exploratory in elementary school. By the time you get into middle school, it becomes content-based. By the time you get into high school, you're moving into AP classes, honors classes, the IB program, the move on when ready. So I think the title itself changes, but the expectations for the students, they don't change.
And it's interesting that you bring up that because, again, teaching high school, you have your students who are tested gifted, and then you have your honors.
That's right.
But a lot of times, gifted and honors are taking the same class together. And gifted and honors really is not the same thing. People think it is because, again, it goes back to that misconception of they're all smart. They're under the smart umbrella. And so they throw them all in, not realizing that taking an honors class simply means you can learn more in a shorter pacing.
That's right.
It doesn't necessarily carry the same characteristics as being tested and labeled gifted. And I think people need to understand that. So, going back to the point about rigor, Dr. Shiva Quinn, thank you. She says that rigor is bringing learning to life and making it relational. She is so right. Also, growth mindset is great for both gifted and non-gifted learners. Absolutely. Bethany Rucker, thank you for tuning in. Gifted equals a high level of curiosity and why. Yes, absolutely.
That's it.
So, someone made a comment earlier on the pre-show, and they wanted to know what you think about when teachers of general ed students make comments such as, well, what is so-and-so doing in that class? And I know she's not gifted. And I know he's not gifted. How did he get in there? How do you feel when teachers make those types of comments?
I think it goes back to the misconceptions that general ed teachers have about gifted students. Because if you look at the dynamics of my current classroom, if you're on the outside looking in, you may have those misconceptions of, well, why is he in there? You know, he plays around too much. He's always talking. Or she's not organized, you know. She doesn't do her homework. Or she talks back. But I have to find myself, and this come over the course of the years working with gifted students, I try to tap into their innate, again, abilities, where their strengths are. And so I rechannel that talking, or rechannel that organization, because I realize, you know, they all have different strengths as well as weaknesses. So those comments come quite often.
I don't know where to start. I don't know
I
where
got
to
another
start.
hot one for you.
But you know what's interesting? What's really
go ahead.
interesting, I was doing some research as I was working on this theory. We generally generalize African American boys sometimes that are active, not participatory in the classroom.
Oh my God, Dr. Gretchen, you took it right out of my mouth. Go ahead. You
But
took
then,
it right out of my
and I
mouth.
know they have to be tested. And I know you mentioned something that was really key. Maybe they're not mature enough, so we have to sit back and allow that timing to connect. But I think there's a population of them that are not receiving that services. So their behaviors and their attitudes are channeling in another direction. Whereas,
I'm sorry, I can't hold it no more. You are so right. And they're getting testing,
right?
but they're not getting tested for gifted. They're getting tested for special education.
Right, and they're not. They really not.
And that was going to be my next question. How many students are sitting in a special education course because they weren't tested for gifted, which is what really was the problem all along.
And no one really understands that you can be twice served. Meaning that you can be on both sides of the spectrum. But the problem is, and I have to kind of go back to one of our first questions as far as how our kids identify. So with Atlanta Public Schools, there are 3 identification processes. You can be tested because of a parent request. You can be tested because there was an automatic assessment that was given system-wide, and you scored at a certain percentile that warrant us to kind of look at you a little bit more. And then the third one is a teacher recommendation. And a lot of times if a child is misbehaving or because there's a rubric / survey that the teachers will do. And as those questions are being asked, if the teacher does not rate the child on a more stronger point, then that child does not meet the requirements for testing. And a lot of times if one of the questions is dealing with humor, if the teacher rates the child low And it's not so much as humor because you're in the classroom and you're the class clown. You have to kind of look at what are we looking for when it comes to humor. How are you communicating with others? How are they perceiving the information that you're putting out? If they laugh at it and it's kind of corny, then that means that you've reached them at a level that most kids may not get it. So they got it. So that's a humor type of characteristic trait that sometimes teachers don't pay attention to. So a lot of our kids are sitting in settings that probably does not support their strengths, because we're kind of looking at it at an at-risk population, but more on the other side of the spectrum, when in all honesty, if you kind of look at why are they misbehaving, why are they not doing what your expectations are in class, it could be because the misconception now is that they're bored. They're finishing up their assignments quicker than what you allowed at the time to be. So now they're fidgeting and trying to figure out what else to do. So
with that energy.
And with their energy. And it could be that they're not being challenged. And I do have a lot of parents that will come and say they're probably cutting up because the teacher per se is not challenging them enough, to meet their needs.
Because then, we have Sally or Sue, first and second grade, sitting quietly. That's that girl syndrome, she's sitting quietly reading. Okay, so she's easily going to be referred by her teacher. But Johnny, is cutting up, moving around the classroom, won't stay seated, But that traditional class setting is not conducive to his creativity. So then what we do, put him in through these tiers, place him inadequately when all you needed was that challenging environment.
And we do have the kids who do sit quietly and don't say anything, and they are not referred as well.
Exactly.
Because they're quiet, so we don't know too much about them. So it can go both ways. That's pretty interesting.
And I think we sometimes equate maturity to intellectual ability, academic ability, and some kids can be highly intellectual and extremely immature, or vice versa. So there's so many sides to it that have to be considered. It's not as surface as people think it is between smart and not smart, So also, Principal Baruti Kafele, America's principal, had a very rich discussion on his page this week regarding highly motivated learners. And so one of his points that he made, and I'm paraphrasing it, and Principal Kafele, I'm not trying to mess up your words, okay? But basically he said it comes down to an equity issue when we don't fully address the needs of our motivated learners as much as we address the needs of those learners who are struggling. So how do you guys feel about it in terms of being an equity issue?
Wow. So what's the old saying? Teach to the middle. Teach to the middle is what most educators have been taught to do, because the middle is where the bubble of your kids are. You may have a small percentage at the top and a small percentage at the bottom. But you teach to the middle. And that's the misconception that the gifted learner will get it. The kids who are at risk, we'll do the best we can, but we can't save them all. So if we can teach that middle bubble, then the battle of us getting the majority of them on to the next level, we've done our job. But that is one of the biggest misconceptions, because all levels of kids need our personal attention. They do.
Dr. Gretchen?
Well, to add to that, before I received my gifted endorsement, I believe that is something that, without having that performance-based coaching available for me in my earlier years, because as a student teacher, you're always placed in the best classroom. You're not really seeing what the issues are, and you don't really see what the issues are until you're fully certified in the classroom doing it yourself. So prior to my so prior to all of that, getting into the general setting, I believe that's what happens. You teach to the middle. And then even as a gifted coordinator in my personal endeavors, helping other educators to receive what I have, I'm also telling them the same thing. You have to first do that interest inventory, see where they are, so that you can find yourself moving from that middle arena where you only focusing on that. That's your safe place. But that unsafe place for you that may tap into some fear for you as an educator is being able to really grow those that are on a higher level, and even those who are not excelling. I have some students that's in my gifted setting that are tested in my gifted setting because my population is 19 students who are actually gifted students that need that additional support. So I still have to find myself pulling and doing the guided reading, guided math to offer them that support that is needed. But that stretches me out of my comfort zone to not just sit as a facilitator of learning for those in the middle, but help those that need that additional support, and then also push those that who are able to obtain that information a lot quicker.
So you're saying there is remediation even for gifted students? Remediation even for gifted students.
Yes, it is.
I do after school tutorial. Sometimes we do a weekend learning where I will do a conference call just to extend them. I'm still teaching them how to do just innate abilities. I know I'm using that word a lot, but that's really meaningful for me. Just how to write a scholarly paper, how to do research without plagiarizing. What does that paper look like? What does developing a project look like? What is effective communication? You know, just teaching them those life skills as well. So it's not just that core content, but just to bridge upon what I know their parents are doing, but just being that added additional voice, even if the parents are not available, you know, just being that additional voice. So what does it look like to be an effective communicator, an effective learner, and a researcher, scholar, so they can move forward in their educational endeavors?
Okay, so you touched on something, and I'm going to try to bring this in real quick, but you touched on something when you said when the parents aren't available.
Yes.
And I think people, again, automatically assume that if the kid is gifted, the parent is highly involved. Can you touch on that very quickly?
Well, I have students who they cannot stay for sports or clubs, so I try to modify that, doing something for them during the day. Parents are not available to help them with the project. So then once again, those misconceptions of those who teach general ed, but I know your students going to all have their projects. I know they're going to excel. No, I'm still operating as that parent support as well, which is why I had to take so much homework off the board and try so that I can show them, even if a parent is not available, these are some things you can do in the afternoon. You want to read that book, dissect that book, understand, do some additional research, even who the author is, farther the book, rechange the ending of the book, trying to give them some home skills so they can take with them for parents that are not available. Because all of them don't have the two-parent home or even the one-parent home. I have students who are still operating as parents themselves, helping their younger siblings. So just being an additional support that they need, and then still trying to break down all these paradigm shifts that other people around me have of my population. And that's not the case. I'm still spending countless of time making sure that my plans and the information I provide for them is able to push them and further their understanding and their learning so they can continuously grow, and then still offer incentives to keep them motivated in their learning.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It comes with teaching.
Yes. At all levels of teaching. And I think as teachers, sometimes we become envious of each other's course loads, and we think that some other professionals have it easier than we do. But when you're fully invested in what you're doing and you really care, it's going to be a heavy load no matter what level you teach. And ladies, on that note, the hour has gone by so quickly. This was so good. I feel like we could just keep going and going.
There's plenty to talk about.
So much to talk about.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Yes, I want to thank everyone who left me comments and questions before the show, during the show. Thank you for tuning in. I tried to get permission to do this. I don't have permission, so I hope it's okay. But a very lovely, accomplished, passionate educator, Fulton County teacher Mrs. Angela Lynette Greer, posted on her Facebook page yesterday coats and curriculum for C.H. Gullett Elementary School. They are raising funds to purchase winter coats for their students, and I'm just so impressed with her efforts to get this done. So I wanted to share her GoFundMe. It is gofundme.com/coats for Gullett. I'm sure I'm not saying that properly. Gullatte Elementary. Her name is Mrs. Angela Lynette Greer. I'll post the link on my page as well for anyone who feels led to give to that effort. Another announcement from me. I am now a published author. sitting next to Dr. Gretchen. I really shouldn't even be bringing this up because Dr. Gretchen has like 85 books, right? And I'm a co-author on an anthology, so I only have 2 little chapters. But let me tell y'all, it was my goal to be published this year. And so it happened. It don't matter how it happened, it happened. The title of the book is The Truth, the Whole Truth, and Nothing But the Truth. So help me, teachers. Myself and 10 other educators are sharing the cold, hard facts about what it takes to be in this profession. And so the book is going to be released in January 2018. I want to thank Mrs. Vicki Kirk May. She is an outstanding educator in Alabama, and our editor, Jamie Hopkins, for the opportunity to get on this project. I know it's going to change a lot of educator lives. So that's the whole truth. And then finally, before I allow my guests to say their goodbyes and tell you how you can connect with them, I have to take a moment to acknowledge my mentor, my teacher, my trainer, my coach, the woman who made me even realize that I could have a radio show, something that I wanted to do years ago and just really did not know how. So I just didn't think it was possible. Miss Regina Sunshine Robinson.
Ooh, wow.
Motivational speaker, coach, woman extraordinaire. I met her earlier this year, and from the day that I met her, she has been nothing but giving and powerful, and she shared so many things with me. Yesterday, I came to her event, the Curvy and Confident Empowerment Awards. Wow. I came to introduce Regina. That's what she asked me to do, but I did not know that at the end of the ceremony, she was going to recognize me as her 2017 Elizabeth Allen Alford Overcomer.
Wow.
So, Regina, thank you so much for thinking of me in that way. I really appreciate you. You have no idea how much you have changed my life this year. And I just want everybody to understand what a dynamic and beautiful person you are. And I wanted to make sure that I thanked you again. Thank you, Regina. I love you so much. Now, Dr. Erica, Dr. Gretchen, please let everyone know how they can connect with you. And if you have any upcoming events or anything for your schools that you want to announce, feel free to do so.
Before I do that, I want to thank you, Dr. Blaze, for inviting me to come. Being a gifted educator is a passion of mine, of course, with 23 years. You have to love it. But I want to thank you so much for opening up your doors for us to talk about gifted education, because it is a misconception about a lot of things dealing with gifted. But thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to put everything on the table and to just talk about that. Currently, I am in Parkside Elementary School in Atlanta Public Schools. So if you would like to leave me an email, just if you have any questions, some general questions about gifted education when it comes to the exploratory process with gifted education, you can reach me at edonerlson@yahoo.com. And we will talk about it and get your questions answered.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Erica.
And I want to tell you thank you as well. I've been so excited just to come out and support, and I'm so proud of you. I just love it. I love it, Dr. Blaze. I love it. So just really, really excited. And you can reach me, or you can join in on my organization online on Facebook, Gifted Across the World, which is a stem off of teachers across the world. We can connect there, but I'm just so excited. So excited.
Well, I
so
thank
excited
you
about
both
the conversation
again for bringing such great dialogue to the show. Dr. Marcus Jackson says, great job, ladies.
Thank you.
And we thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Dr. Marquita Blaze Show, candid conversations that create change. I am on here at Instinct Radio every first and third Sunday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The next show, we'll be talking the school to prison pipeline, so you do not want to miss it.
Wow.
Thank you all.
Wow.
In the world, playing all of today's hits. You're listening to Instinct Radio.